right, St. Vitus! Woo! Thank you all so much for coming out. Thank you to St. Vitus for having all of us here. Thank you to Z2 Comics, and thank you to Trooper Beer. Who's got a Trooper in their hand? Raise it right now. Scream for me, Greenpoint. Bruce, I think they'll get a little bit louder if you do it.
No, there you go. Well, I'd have to charge them money if I was going to scream. You know what I mean?
All right. Let's talk about the Mandrake project, the new comic series that you have coming out on Z2. Of course, tied into the Mandrake project solo album, the first Bruce Dickinson album since 2005's Tyranny of Souls. So everybody here who has a copy of the Mandrake project, hold it up. All right. There we go. The very first.
That's actually all we printed, but never mind. That's
very limited, exclusive. Yeah. The first thing you see on that is the cover is holding a medallion. Bruce, can you tell us about the significance of this medallion? This is the first thing a lot of people are seeing here for the Mandrake project comic.
Well, and at the end of episode 1, you discovered that the medallion is actually just used as a kind of ID. And it gets used for a couple of other things. And without wishing to give away bits of the story, the medallion has a couple of dates on it, which become significant as you go through. In fact, episode 2 reveals why one of the dates is significant, but you have to wait till a little bit further down the storyline to figure out why the other one is significant.
I was looking up a lot of the dates, trying to Google it and see is it a birthday thing that ties in here? Is there a bunch of numerology I don't know about? Definitely don't know a lot about numerology.
You won't get it.
We're definitely not gonna crack the code. So Bruce, what started with the Mandrake project? Did this start first as music or as a storyline for something else, for something greater?
The Mandrake project was actually the very last thing that happened. In other words, the name of the album and the comic was right up till almost a year ago. I had no title for the album, and I had no title for the comic. I didn't know what to call it, And I got a page of bits of scribbles on a piece of paper, which are completely embarrassing, which I shall never ever show to another living human being.
No working titles or anything?
Oh yeah, that's right. They were so embarrassing. I was just like, oh my God, did I write this crap? But what I wanted was a title that was sort of like a bit of an enigma, that people would look at it and go, what's that all about? What's the Mandrake project? What is that? Is that some weird secret government shit or whatever it is? So I went through a few different projects. I thought the Alan Parsons project. No, that wouldn't work.
Already taken.
But and then Mandrake just got me. I mean, I already used the word Mandrake a couple of times in Moonchild, the Maiden song. There's hear the Mandrake scream, blah blah. It was as a plant. It was hallucinogenic. It's mentioned in the Bible as an aphrodisiac. It's used to seduce. Rachel borrows her sister's mandrakes and uses it to seduce her sister's boyfriend in the Bible. Yeah. So
Woo!
Yeah. So it goes all. There's all kinds of stuff, and Harry Potter, talked about mandrakes and everything else like that. So I thought this is kind of cool, and there were various links and connotations and some really dark shit as well. Like mandrakes were all supposed to grow underneath gibbets where people were executed or hung. And the reason for that was because a lot of corpses, at the moment when they were hung, 50% of men ejaculate.
You heard it here.
Yeah. So and this comes from one of the world's leading forensic pathologists told me this, because I did a podcast called Psycho Schizo Espresso with a mate of mine, a psychologist.
Yes, excellent.
And we interviewed this Australian forensic pathologist, and we were talking about autoerotic strangulation. And he said, well, yeah, mate. He said, as it happens, when you get strangled, when people are hung, executed, 50% of the time it's a reflex from the body. And people would collect the semen from their shoes in the Middle Ages because they thought it was kind of sacred and had weird energy and shit. So, anyway, all this shit will be revealed later in the book. There is a little bit of like ritual sex in book one, but trust me, it gets much, much worse as you go through. So the Mandrake project, the name was the very last thing to happen. The idea of doing a story that went with the album, that would be a concept album then, the idea of doing that has always intrigued me. And back in 2014, I came up with a very basic story. The idea was I would have one comic that would go with the album. And the story for the comic was based on a song called Accident of Birth. In Accident of Birth, there's a brother separated from his twin at birth. One's in hell, the other one's alive. Survivor's guilt. Why him, not me? Why am I not in hell? And he's survived. But imagine there was a way of bringing back his dead brother from the underworld. Imagine there was technology that could do that. And that technology is owned by two guys, Professor Lazarus and Dr. Necropolis. And one's a good guy, one's a bad guy. One wants to use it for the good of humanity. One wants to make a load of money. That was the basic
story of the world.
Yeah, that was the basic beginning of the idea. So then, obviously, a lot of things happened, like me getting sick, and then me getting better, and then going out with Maiden, making up for lost time, and then at the end of all that, COVID happened, and nobody came to America for 3 years. So when I finally reconvened, I moved on the story, and I kind of separated, in my mind, I'd separated out the album from the comic. The comic had grown to 12 episodes, and I'd run it past a few buddies of mine in Hollywood. One of them was a guy who I met through a friend on Zoom, and we used to have Zoom meetings because there's nothing else you could do back then. And his name was Kurt Sutter, who wrote The Sons of Anarchy and The Shield and stuff. Awesome, awesome writer. I couldn't believe I was talking to this guy on a Zoom for an hour and a half.
You probably couldn't believe he was talking to you.
Well, yeah. So I ran the idea, my new upgraded story. I just kind of ran it past him and said, "What do you think? Has this got legs? What?" And he went, "Yeah, it's really good." I went, "Honestly?" He went, "Yeah." I went, "Oh, okay." And he was the guy that suggested that I do a comic. I said, "Well, I was already thinking of doing a comic." I said, "But all right, 12 episodes is a lot. How do you make this work?" So he was really cool. He sent me. He did a comic called Sisters of Sorrow. And he sent me the comic plus the script plus the treatment, the whole background to the whole thing, so I could see what was involved in the writing process. And then I just got stuck into it, and the more I got stuck into it, the more dark and twisted it got. And we're now at episode just finished up the script. Within the next week or so, I hope, couple of weeks, we'll have the script for episode 3. Episode 2 is already with the artists, and they're finishing up their art in the next, week, 10 days. So this is just a rolling thing for the next almost 3 years.
So this has been for 10 years in the works almost, and is going to continue to be in the works. And for anybody who doesn't know, there are going to be the 12 comics coming out. One is going to be issued every quarter through Z2 Comics. So how did you wind up at Z2? Why is Z2 the perfect home for this?
Okay, I had no clue about comic company. I obviously had heard of Marvel and DC, but they're just going to throw you out the door.
They ring a bell.
Yeah. But you got to turn up and say, "Hey, I've got an idea for a comic." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, actually go." And it's the same thing that I said to Kurt. I said, "Look, I've got this story. Should I write it like a treatment and send it to Netflix?" He goes, "No, it'll just go in the bin like everything else, He said, "Do a comic because paper is cheap, film is expensive, but when you're doing a comic, you're effectively almost writing a storyboard anyway. And I knew that from other film people I've been speaking with. So I said, well, where do I take it? And he said he went and put the feelers out to people he knew who were in the business of comics. And he said, you should take it to this company called Z2. And I went, that name seems familiar. So I phoned Maiden's management, my management as well, obviously, and said, company called Z2. They went, oh, yeah, we're working on them, on that, the Iron Maiden Peace of Mind book. I went, oh, shit, because I've got this idea for a comic, for a graphic novel and blah, blah, blah. Maybe we should get together. And so obviously I looked at what they'd been doing, and it seemed that most of the time Z2 were doing, very, very high quality, but they were like one-off events, orientated around music, So I thought,
based around the albums. There's a Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah. So I thought, well, that's great, but Mandrake Project is not that. Mandrake Project is a Watchman style, dark story. So I don't know if that's gonna, do the Marilyn Monroe thing. Is that going to blow your dress up? It's and so anyway, I pitched the story to them, and they loved it, and they genuinely seemed to love it, and I was actually really impressed. Are there any of them in the? Hopefully they're not in the room because they won't get their fucking head out the door. But I was so impressed at how knowledgeable they were and how passionate they were about comics. And I said, look, this is like a some people call it, if you're like middle class, you say, it's a graphic novel because you don't want to be seen going, oh, it's a comic, but it's a comic, right? So they were so passionate about that, and they'd been in the industry for so long. And Rance, as a kind of artistic director, I was like, man, this is you guys are great. Why haven't you done one of these before? And they went, well, we would always love to. We'd love to do that. We'd love to start developing, like long range projects like this. But we just haven't gotten around to it yet. I said, well, maybe this is a open door for you to try and, have a go. So that's what we're doing, and they've done a great job. It's the first. Obviously, it's my first comic. And it's like my baby, and no, they're really cool. The quality of the printing and everything, and just the presentation and attention to detail is awesome.
Yeah, all the artwork in the Mandrake Project, as if you've already opened the Mandrake Project, you've seen it. There's at least somebody here who's probably super excited about that sex scene. One who made a little bit of a noise before, but. Bruce, let's shift over to the album a little bit. And, of course, your writing partner for this is Roy Z. He even played bass on this, too, which he hadn't in the past. What is different about Roy Z and your creative chemistry than what you can get with anybody in Iron Maiden?
With Maiden, we've been together for so long, and people do split off into their, little silos, and go off into their, like Steve, likes to go off, and even if he has a couple of ideas from, Yannick or myself or somebody else like that, he'll just go, oh, I like that, yeah. And then he'll disappear for like 3 weeks. and then he'll just appear and go, yeah, I've got it, yeah.
Your song is ready.
Your song is ready, and Nico, you need to come in tomorrow and do your bit. And well, what about the rest of the band? No, you don't need to be there. So it's all, and now because of technology, so we never used to work like that because back in the day it was tape, and so you actually had to know the song before you played the song. Of course. So, and we don't do demos. So all of this is in his head, which is very impressive. But everybody's like wandering around like a blind man with a white stick going, what is this, the chorus? What is this? What comes next? He goes, oh, can't tell you yet. Just do that bit and you'll find out. It's a mystery. So So we've ended up working in this different way over the years. As Senjutsu was done like that, I tend to write with Adrian because we bounce ideas off each other, and we think a similar way about writing songs. So usually Adrian and I will play through the song like the whole thing, and then play it and go, what do you think? Is this cool or whatever? So writing on the wall was that. And then, we've got a lot of writers. I mean, there's 4 writers in the band. So, you're not gonna end up going, oh, the album's all mine, because it's just not gonna happen, So I suppose years ago, people would have been like deadly rivalry trying to get their song on the record. Life's too short. Come on, it's a Maiden.
You're doing double albums now, anyway.
It's a Maiden record, yeah. So we're gonna, it's all gonna come out in the wash anyway, And because it's a Maiden record, we've got a style, albeit more proggy now. But we do have this style, with the sound of Steve's bass, and it makes me laugh. Whenever we get in a room together, after having not played together for 6 months or 9 months or whatever it was when I got sick, we could get in and do sort of like play Happy Birthday to You, and it would sound like Maiden playing Happy Birthday to You, because because it just does, and we made everything gets Maidenized, and that's cool, but you step outside of that. And you've got things you can do that you couldn't do in Maiden, So I mean, for example, if I went to Steve and we got this great idea for a track, Steve, and it involves like Dick Dale surf guitar and bongos, he'd go, "What the fuck? You lost your mind." But for Resurrection Men, it works brilliantly because everybody listens to it and go, "Oh my God, that's like a heavy metal spaghetti western." I mean,
It is.
It's one of my favorites on the album. It fits. it's perfect. The heavy metal spaghetti western meets Hawkwind meets like Nativity in Black. Yeah. What's why not? But so I can do all that shit. In my world with Roy, and we work together really well, even at long range. I mean, when I got back together with him after Skunkworks folded up,
love that album.
Yeah, it's a great record, and we're remixing that at the moment and doing an Atmos mix of it in February. So, and it sounds great. But got back together with Roy. He phoned me up. Obviously, time difference, so it was like midnight in London and 4:00 in the afternoon where he was. So he phones me up and goes, "Hey, listen, I've got a couple of songs I want to run past you." He didn't know that I just like put the whole Skunkworks thing to bed and was thinking that I might have to find a job stacking shelves or something, And he played me "Accident of Birth." And another song, which I can't remember what it was. I used to remember.
It's
it
kind
might
of
be
the
Star
first
Children.
songs going in the more metal direction that we know.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And he played "Accident of Birth" down the phone. And I was just like, I wrote down "Accident of Birth." The chorus came like that. The first line of "Journey Back to the Dark Side, back into the womb, back to where the spirits move like vapor from the tomb." I'm like, oh, fuck, I just wrote the shit. There's something going on here. There's something going on here. And I said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I got on a plane and went straight to LA. And I was there for about 7 or 8 days. And we wrote and demoed 6 tracks.
Wow.
6 tracks in like 8 days. And I brought it all back, just a drum machine and stuff like that in his kitchen. And the record label couldn't believe it. In fact, the record label thought that I'd actually done half the album because the demos were so good. And I went, "It's not finished." I said, "We're going to do it properly one day." The guy goes, "Oh, really? It's not finished?" I went, "No." So then I went back and we did the rest of it. And then we recorded it, and then the rest is history. I mean, I've been working with Roy for 30 years. And when we did Balls to Picasso, I mean, I had 3 goes at that album because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, because I'd been in the Maiden institution, And I realised when I stepped outside, I didn't know how to write songs anymore for anybody except Iron Maiden.
Or even what your musical identity is at that point.
Well, your musical identity is just like, is part of the whole system. So that was a bit of a shock. A bit expensive as well, because making 3 albums making 1 album and doing it again is just like artistic. Making 3 is just fucking careless. You know what I mean? So, but I did, and the 3rd iteration of it was done with in LA with Goodnight LA Studios with Shay Baby. I was producing it. That's who introduced me to Roy, because he said, "You've got to meet this kid. He's like this amazing guitar player. He's got this fantastic band." And I went to see Roy, and I was just like, "God, this kid's on fire! Wow, where did he come
Tribe
from?"
of Gypsies, if anybody doesn't know.
So we got together, and we just loved all the same stuff. We love Purple, we love Sabbath, and things like that. And he had some things that I was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool," So we started writing songs immediately. And we wrote 4 or 5 songs that went on to Balls to Picasso, but he didn't produce the record because I didn't know what he could do. And we had a producer, Keith Olsen, that was the other guy. Keith Olsen was doing the album. The engineer was Shay Baby. Keith said to Shay, "Hey, you finished the album." If I'd known then what I know now, I'd have just gone, "Tell you what, Z, just let's do the album together." But Balls to Picasso was not nearly as heavy as it should have been, and we're also remixing that album, and we've discovered all these guitars that were put down that didn't appear in the final mix. So we're going to drag all those back, is the idea. Maybe Roy might put in a couple of more aggressive, modern sounding stuff as well, and kind of do the album the way it really should have been done in the first place. But by this time, by the time we got to Accident of Birth, I was like, "Z, you know what? Let's just do the album ourselves." And then we moved on from there, Chemical Wedding. And Chemical Wedding, he came up with these really cool guitar sounds. And
they're so thick.
Yeah.
Even on the new one, too.
Yeah. No, well, he's evolved that guitar sound out of Chemical Wedding. I mean, he's got, all his sounds are in it. It's funny. All the sounds now for people's guitar sounds, they're all in a little box about the size of that skull, and yeah, he goes, "Yeah, that's the Chemical Wedding box. Dunk, 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 Chemical Wedding sound. There it is, But you have to develop that first. You have to, before you can digitize it and stick it in a box, you have to have the mental vision to be able to say, that's the sound I want to create, Sure. And he does have that,
Now, you do play a little bit of guitar. You've written some songs on guitar before. How much did you do writing on the guitar for the Mandrake project, if any, and how do you bounce those ideas between you and Roy?
Well, he made me, the bastard. He made me play guitar.
Terrible guy.
He was a terrible guy.
Can you believe this guy?
Because I was just like, I said, I'm going to show you the riffs, Z, and the chords and everything. And he said, "Well, yeah, cool. Well, hey, you do it." I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm not very good. So if you do it, it'll be a lot quicker, And he said, "No, you do it." I went, "Okay, just for the demo, right? Just for the demos."
Sure.
So on we went for the demos, and yeah, for a lot of it did get replaced, but some bits he kept sneakily without me realizing. There's a guitar solo, my first guitar solo in recorded history, and also probably my last.
What song is that on?
It's in Face in the Mirror.
Ooh, that's a nice, tender one, piano-led. Your voice against piano is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I do like it. It's it's a resonance thing. Honestly, piano again. I wrote some songs on piano. Now, I cannot play piano. I'll make a good stab at playing guitar. You know, if I practiced, which I don't, I'd probably be better. But piano, I genuinely, absolutely, 100% cannot play piano. My fingers, like, go around. When I did Empire of the Clouds, which I wrote on piano, even though I can't play piano, I wrote Empire of the Clouds, and the piano, we had this amazing grand piano in the studio, which was just covered in Post-it notes. You know, press here for this verse, press here for this, you know, like, you know. I mean, I was like, okay, shit, I'm just going to do it in little bits, so I can play that bit, but I can't get my left hand to do what it has to do there, so it's just that bit, and then it'll do that bit at the same time, but I can't do them both together, so hey, you just have to, you know. But then they made me do the fucking piano on the record. And I said, can we get a pianist? Why not get a pianist, somebody who actually can play piano? And Steve was like, no, we're not getting somebody else in from outside the band, no. You know, I was shit.
What about Michael Kenny? He's playing the keyboards, the synthesizer.
Yeah, no, he was. I don't know why they didn't get Michael Kenny, to be honest with you. Yeah, so I had to do it, and it was just... It was shocking because we had to dig out. We were using Pro Tools, like everybody else now on the planet. But in order for me to play piano, we had to go back into something called MIDI. And that was a nightmare because we're going to be doing MIDI alongside Pro Tools because the only way we could get me to play piano was to have it MIDI'd, so it would, like, if I played things out of time, it would go and like shift it. But what that means is that the sound of it is kind of robotic and kind of mechanical. It doesn't have that lovely flow that somebody can really play piano has. So I've always wanted to re-record that song with a full orchestra and a choir and a proper pianist and everything else, and you know, and do it 80-piece orchestra. Yeah, I'm a big fan of those now, having worked with a few of them.
Yeah, because you do a lot of the orchestral stuff with the John Lord tributes, which also, I think, recently featured your new bassist.
Which is how I met her.
Tanya.
Yeah, Tanya, yeah. So we haven't got a bass player because Roy did all the bass on the record. Need a bass player. So I'm working with Tanya in April doing this concerto for group and orchestra tour, about a dozen shows, something like that, in Eastern Europe and in Brazil. So we were doing like 6 Purple tracks and Jerusalem and Tears of the Dragon off my solo stuff. And the first half of the show was doing the concerto for group and orchestra, which is about an hour long, 3 movements. So Tanya was the bass player, because originally we had John Lord from Purple, and he did one show with us in Hungary. So I'm standing on stage singing Purple songs with John Lord. Not with John Lord, with... John Lord passed away, but Roger Glover. So I'm with Roger Glover on bass. And I'm thinking, pinch yourself. This is outrageous. And he's a lovely gentleman. And so he was busy. He couldn't do the tour because he was playing with Purple. So Tanya was suggested. I was like, well, yeah, sounds great to me. You know, she plays for Whitesnake. And she's such a good bass player. I mean, she's an amazing bass player. Really, really cool. Pleasure to work with. Very funny. And I said, what are you doing next year? Because I need a bass player for 4 months. You know, can I borrow you? You know, I'll pay you.
Like she's going to say that she's busy.
Yeah, no, but no, she does a lot of stuff. She's a very enthusiastic vegan. So she has a big website and does TV shows and stuff. She's got a TV show with is it Derek from Sepultura?
Derek Green, he's another. Yeah, he's a big vegan.
Yeah, so they have like a double act that they do as this big TV show they do all around the place. So anyway, she's a really cool vegan. She's not like she's not like one of the militant ones that sort of like starts to stab you in the eyes if you like look at a chicken or something. so she's reasonable. She's like, I explain that veganism is like really healthy, fantastic, really good for you, and it would be great if we all ate a little bit less meat. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I agree with you on the last bit, but I do like a steak from time to time, so nothing I can do about that. Sorry, But she's cool with it. So she's great to have on the tour. She's good fun.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your life outside of music. I talked to Adrian.
Doesn't exist anymore. Not now.
I talked to Adrian a while ago about his fishing book.
Yeah,
believe it or not,
it's really good.
It is really good.
It's really good. I never knew that fish were so interesting. I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm like, wow, okay,
I was like, all right, I guess I'll read this because
I thought
really
they were
talk
dumb.
To Adrian,
They're smarter than they look, aren't they?
Yeah.
Otherwise you couldn't catch them. You wouldn't be able to.
But I asked him about this idea of water being a conduit to creativity. We all kind of get ideas in the shower. We've had it happen before, but you were a little bit different. Let's work with another element, the air. When you were flying as a pilot, do you see this as any sort of creative inspiration that you draw from it? Of course, we have Coming Home off the Final Frontier, but how does that frame your perspective, and how did it change the way that you see things?
I wish I could say that it did, but actually it doesn't. Not in the slightest.
We appreciate an honest answer.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I mean, I can, after the fact, I can think about the kind of the emotions and things like that you get from like Coming Home, which is a pilot coming back, but most of the time you can use your imagination on the ground. Mm-hmm. So one of the best things that I'd done, which it didn't end up on the record, there's a song called Eternal, which is kind of a little bit Floydy, but it's basically about the Apollo astronauts, and in fact the whole astronaut program, who are now by and large, they're almost, in a way, they're kind of forgotten. They're like no longer the coolest people on Earth, or not on this Earth, Yeah. And during that period when I was growing up, it was just like an astronaut. Oh my God. And now it's like, yeah, Elon Musk's a fucking astronaut, I mean, Jeff Bezos is a fucking astronaut, we're not impressed. These people, it's hard to imagine how fucking dangerous space was when these people were doing it. You're sitting on the end of this big fucking candle, and you light that touch paper, and there's a really good chance that it might not work. Sure. So the courage, and then the mind-bending experience of being in space, which I can only imagine, and I've met one or two astronauts, and when you talk to them about space, this kind of mist comes over their eyes, and they're back. And you go, would you go back? And all of them are like, oh, yeah. And their kids are like going, no, Dad, no, Dad, come back, stay here,
Stay in order.
But there's something magical about it. So yeah, that song was about the way that we have these heroes, and then we just kind of go, but Kim Kardashian's ass is much more interesting than you, I mean, and that's the modern world we live in. So it was a song about that, about how we have all these heroes and then we just kind of forget them, and we just say, oh, well, that was like years ago, so that doesn't matter. So I've never been in a rocket. I've been to museums and things like that.
Would you like to?
Somebody asked me that question actually. If you had the chance to go on Elon Musk's mission to Mars, but it would be a one-way trip.
Of course.
you go there and you got to stay there, right? And you were given a ticket to go on the trip. This was during the one-man show. Somebody asked this question, and on the card, would you go? And I went, yes, I would. Yes, would I go? Would I accept the ticket? Yes, I would accept the ticket. And then I would donate it to Jeff Bezos.
See if he gets stuck in orbit, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's a one-way ticket, so, you know, it's, unless he's planning to build an Amazon warehouse out there, you know.
It's probably already in the works.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more about flying, too, because one thing is you're 65 now. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
know what happens to pilots at 65.
Take them out the back and shoot them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think age is really the best way to measure life? The way that they're doing this with pilots? And just
Well,
overall?
it depends which, to be fair, it depends which country you're in. So if you, for example, like say you're a professional pilot, which is what we're talking about, because as long as you're like, you know, reasonably competent, you know, sort of, which is like more competent than any of the present candidates for the president of the United States. As long as you're reasonably mentally competent, you know, you can fly till as long as you can, you know, see straight and hear and things like that. So in for example, Australia, there's no limit to what time you can be a commercial pilot. But you have to pass the same checks as all the young guys. You have to do the physical stuff the same. You know, your eyes have got to be up to snuff. Not perfect, but you can have them corrected for vision and stuff like that. So, you know, it's a tiring old job in the end. Now, some people, you know, they just want to go on and then when they stop flying, they just kind of die. You know, it's true. A lot of airline pilots die within like 5 years of retirement. It's an incredible number. It's quite shocking, actually.
What do you think that is from?
They just spent their whole life doing it, and there's like, what do I do now?
A purpose-driven life, a lack of a purpose-driven.
Yeah, what do I do now? You know, and I mean, I always used to say there are when you get to a certain level in a career in aviation, because everybody, as a professional pilot, everybody probably, there's some people that don't, but most everybody starts out going, I want to be a captain of whatever. I mean, nowadays it would be like an Airbus or something. Back in my day, everybody was like, I want to be a captain of a 747. Whoa, yeah, you know. So you start off as a junior first. You get your licenses and everything, and then you have to get a job. Well, that's assuming you now get a job. You start off, you're the lowest of the low. You're a junior first officer. You jump through all the hoops, and gradually you go up. A lot of airlines are seniority based, but smaller airlines are based on kind of meritocracy. If you're smart and you're clever, you can advance quite quickly. Mm-hmm. So after 3 or 4 years, you could be up for doing an assessment to be a captain. But anyway, once you get to be a captain, and let's say you've done some other stuff, and you get to around about 6,000 or 7,000 hours of flight time, frankly, some guys are like, and girls, clearly, obviously, because it's both. Some people are like, all I want to do for the rest of my life is exactly what I'm doing right now. And never stop that. Never change. Boom.
Some people are perfectly happy doing that.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are like, okay, I'm really bored. Actually, this job kind of sucks. You know, it's not that difficult to do. Now that I'm got to the level that I'm at, you know, I can do it half of it in my sleep, and I just get abused by all these people. So really, I'm just going to be a grumpy fucking old grouch and take the money and growl at people, right? Those are potentially dangerous pilots because they've got a bad attitude. Mm-hmm. And then there are other pilots who go, you know what? It's 10,000 hours. I kind of like flying, but just all this, you know, doing the same Groundhog Day every day. Maybe I should do something different. Maybe I should go part-time. Maybe I should do some training. Maybe I should go into a bit of management. Maybe I should do a bit of this, right?
All kind of things you've touched on in your aviation career too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened to me, is I became a trainer, and I was a ground school trainer. I was the chief technical pilot, the 757, 737. So I was training other pilots. I was in the simulator doing stuff. It's the learning makes it interesting. But I could see there was this cutoff point where people would go, either I want everything to be Groundhog Day and that makes me really happy, or there's more to life than just doing this. And there's other people that just sort of give up and go, well, I can't do anything else, but I hate it. And they stay with it, which is kind of sad. But, you have those, kind of choices. And I observed it in a lot of pilots. Because as a first officer, you fly with captains, and a lot of them have been around an awful long time. And some of them are fantastic, enthusiastic, cool. Others just grumpy old sods, and actually potentially dangerous because of it. So you got to keep your eye on people.
And you get that across any industry that you're in. You're always going to see those different levels of people, and you just want to look for the ones who are always going to be looking to be challenged themselves, because they're the ones that are going to also challenge you and challenge others, and that's what raises everybody up, right?
Yeah, just keep life interesting. without going, it'd be really. I mean, I had one guy once. I was flying. We were flying into the Algerian desert to take some oil workers to a place called Hassi Massoud. It was a regular run, 3 days a week. We'd go and take them in. They'd extract them from the oil wells, and they'd go fly them home. It's about a 3-hour trip, but it was like a 5 o'clock in the morning wake up, go to the airport, get on the plane, do all your bits and bobs, and off you'd go. And I was paired up with a guy that was an ex big airline. And he came on, he was wearing Mickey Mouse socks, which I was like, that's cool, whatever, whatever you like, that's fine. And he didn't say much, and he said, set the airplane up for me. I went, yeah, okay. And he was reading the paper the whole time. And I said, do you want to check anything? They went, oh, yeah, okay. Back to reading the paper again, And we...
he was on autopilot.
So we took off. Well, you fly most of it on autopilot anyway. But we took off. And then as soon as we got to, not really even very high altitude, out came the paper, big... And it literally, there's a big wall of paper between me and him. And I thought, oh, okay, fine. Whatever, well, I'll just mind the store just in case anything happens while you happen to be reading the paper, dude, And I started engaging him in conversation, right? He was borderline psychopathic, right?
We learned on your podcast you're a psychopath too, but a good psychopath.
Yeah.
You went between the good and the bad.
And I was just like, this guy's a bit of a crackpot. So we get over the Algerian desert, right? And we're like, and he said, should we go down and have a look at the desert?
Go down.
Yeah. As in, and he said, I said, well, we're a little bit away from our normal top of descent, actually. We'd be going down a bit early. He goes, yeah, well, we could go down a bit early, can't we? There's nothing out there, really. So he dials in to this thing called the MCP, the mode control panel, which is where the autopilot controls. And there's the altitude selector. And he dials in 500, as in 500 feet. And then... hits the automatics, and slowly the plane starts to descend. So I had to diplomatically explain to him that 500 feet was 500 feet above sea level, and that, in fact, the desert was actually at 2,500 feet above sea level. So unless you intend to be a submarine and we don't have a fucking periscope, I suggest you go a bit higher before you start scattering camels,
what was his reaction? Was he
was like,
alarmed by his
it was like,
miscalculation?
it was like, oh, really? Oh, there you go. Thanks for that. Yeah, you know. He said it's nice to find somebody that still enjoys doing this job. Yeah, he was a nutcase. But anyway.
Well, even if there's something that mundane in your life, it's all about finding the small things to enjoy. And of course, this has been a pretty large thing to enjoy for all of us here, although a pretty intimate setting for everyone.